A poor little boy was helping a billionaire fix his Mustang when he noticed something unusual, a distinctive silver ring on the man's finger that sparked a flicker of recognition in his eyes. In that moment, neither of them realized how this chance encounter would forever alter both their lives, connecting two worlds that seemed impossibly far apart. Welcome back to Genie Soul Stories, where we believe that the most powerful connections often begin with the simplest acts of kindness. Before we dive into today's incredible story about an unexpected friendship that transcended wealth and circumstance, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss our weekly tales of hope and transformation. Have you ever helped a complete stranger without expecting anything in return? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone watching today. Now, let's begin our journey with a boy named Freddie, whose generous heart was far richer than his empty pockets. 12-year-old Freddie S. Franklin moved through life with quiet determination. The small, wiry boy with perpetually oil-stained fingernails and a mop of unruly brown hair was a familiar sight in the working-class neighborhood of Riverbrook, pushing his second-hand bicycle from one odd job to the next. Most days after school, you could find him mowing lawns, walking dogs, or repairing anything mechanical his neighbors needed fixed. "Freddie's got magic hands," the locals would say. "That boy can fix anything with a motor." But what most people didn't see was Freddie's life inside the small, weathered house he shared with his grandmother, Eloise. The faded photographs on their walls told the story of what Freddie had lost: parents who died in a car accident 4 years earlier, leaving behind a traumatized 8-year-old and a grandmother ill-equipped to raise him on her meager pension. Yet despite these hardships, Eloise had instilled in Freddie something invaluable, a belief that kindness cost nothing but meant everything. "We may not have much, Freddie," she would say while counting coins for their electricity bill, "but we always have enough to be kind." Each night after finishing his homework, a struggle due to his undiagnosed dyslexia, Freddie would retreat to their tiny garage. There, surrounded by salvaged car parts collected from the local junkyard, he would spend hours studying automotive repair through tattered manuals and videos watched on the ancient computer at the public library. The garage walls were papered with drawings of vintage cars he dreamed of restoring someday. His classmates often mocked his second-hand clothes and his constant smell of motor oil, calling him grease monkey and junkyard boy. But Freddie hardly noticed. In his pocket, he always carried the one thing that mattered most: his father's broken pocket watch. The tarnished silver timepiece had stopped ticking the day of the accident, its hands frozen at 3:47. Freddie had promised himself that someday, when he had the right tools and knowledge, he would make it work again. "One day," he whispered to the watch each night before bed, "you'll tick again. I promise, Dad." That particular Thursday had been especially difficult. Freddie's grandmother had been coughing more than usual, and her medicine was running low. The electric bill was overdue, and Mrs. Winters had cancelled Freddie's lawn mowing job because her son was visiting from college. With only $27 earned that week, Freddie felt the weight of their situation pressing down on his young shoulders. As dark clouds gathered overhead, Freddie pedaled home from his last errand of the day, delivering groceries to elderly Mr. Patel. The rain started as a drizzle but quickly became a downpour. Soaked to the skin and shivering, Freddie took a shortcut through the back roads that wound behind the affluent Oak Ridge estates, a neighborhood so different from his own that it might as well have been on another planet. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the road ahead and revealing something unexpected: a sleek, vintage Ford Mustang, candy apple red with gleaming chrome, pulled onto the shoulder. Its hood was up, and a tall figure in an expensive raincoat stood before it, looking utterly defeated. Freddie slowed his bicycle. He should keep going, get home to Grandma, get dry, count their money one more time to see if they could afford both medicine and electricity this month. But something made him stop. The man looked up as Freddie approached, his expression a mixture of frustration and wariness. He was younger than Freddie initially thought, maybe in his late 30s, with sharp features and calculating eyes that seemed to assess Freddie's worth in seconds. "You lost, kid." The man's voice was deep and commanding, accustomed to being obeyed. Freddie shook his head, rainwater streaming down his face. "No, sir. Car trouble. The man gestured to the Mustang with an irritated sweep of his hand. Damn thing just died. Driver's getting help, but my phone's dead. And I have a meeting in an hour that I cannot miss. Freddie leaned his bicycle against a tree and stepped closer, drawn by the beautiful machine despite himself. It's a 1965 fastback, isn't it? 289 V8. Surprise flickered across the man's face. You know cars. Some, Freddie admitted, his eyes already examining the engine. Mind if I take a look? The man stepped back, skepticism evident but options limited. Knock yourself out, kid. Freddie approached the Mustang with reverence. This wasn't just any car. This was automotive royalty, the kind he'd only seen in magazines and dreams. His hands moved with practiced precision despite their trembling from cold and excitement. When did it start acting up? Freddie asked, his voice shifting from hesitant to confident as he entered familiar territory. Sputtered about a mile back, then just died, the man replied, watching with increasing interest as Freddie methodically checked various components. I think I know what it might be, Freddie said after a few minutes. Your carburetor's flooded, and there's corrosion on these terminals. He pointed to the battery connection. Do you have any tools in the trunk? The man produced a small emergency kit. Freddie rummaged through his own backpack, pulling out a multi-tool and some sandpaper he kept for his bicycle repairs. Working swiftly despite the rain, he cleaned the battery terminals and made adjustments to the carburetor. Try it now, he instructed, stepping back from the engine. The man slid into the driver's seat, skepticism still evident. When he turned the key, the engine sputtered once, twice, then roared to life with a powerful rumble that sent vibrations through the wet pavement. For the first time, a genuine smile transformed the man's face. Well, I'll be damned, he said, climbing out of the car. Where did you learn to do that? Freddie shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. Just picked it up. I like fixing things. You more than like it. You've got a gift. The man extended his hand. John Donaldson. And you are? Freddie Franklin, sir. As their hands met, something caught Freddie's eye. A flash of silver on John's right hand. A ring unlike any Freddie had seen before. Two hands clasped together, crafted in intricate detail from brushed silver that seemed to glow even in the dim, rainy light. John noticed his stare. Something wrong? Freddie blinked, embarrassed at being caught staring. No, sir. Just your ring. It's really cool. Something shifted in John's expression. A softening, a distant memory stirred. He twisted the ring absently. It's from a long time ago. A promise I made. As Freddie wiped his hands on his soaked jeans, he reached into his pocket reflexively, checking that his father's watch was still there. As he did, John caught sight of the tarnished timepiece. That's a beautiful watch, John remarked. Doesn't look like it's working though. It was my dad's, Freddie replied, his voice smaller now. He died. I'm going to fix it someday. For a moment, the only sound was the purr of the Mustang's engine and the steady drum of rain on metal. Two strangers, connected briefly by mechanical trouble, standing in the downpour with unexpected understanding passing between them. Let me pay you for your help, John said suddenly, reaching for his wallet. Freddie stepped back. No thank you, sir. I didn't do it for money. John frowned, wallet halfway out of his pocket. Everyone does things for money, kid. Freddie shook his head. My grandma says not everything good is done for money. Sometimes you just help because someone needs it. The words hung in the air between them, simple but profound. John stared at the soaking wet boy before him. Clothes threadbare, shoes held together with duct tape, yet standing with quiet dignity as he refused payment for his skills. At least let me give you a ride home, John offered, glancing at Freddie's bicycle. We can put that in the trunk. Freddie hesitated, years of stranger danger warnings flashing through his mind. But something about John Donaldson felt trustworthy, despite his obvious wealth and initial gruffness. Okay, Freddie agreed. But I can guide you. The streets in my neighborhood can be confusing. As they loaded Freddie's bicycle into the Mustang's trunk, neither could have imagined how their lives were about to intertwine. All because of a broken-down car, a rainstorm, and a boy who believed in helping without expecting return. The interior of the Mustang smelled of expensive leather and subtle cologne. Freddie sat stiffly in the passenger seat, acutely aware of his soaking wet clothes against the pristine upholstery. "I'm getting your car all wet," he apologized. John waved dismissively. "Cars can be cleaned. Where am I heading?" Freddie directed him through a series of turns, leading them away from the manicured lawns of Oak Ridge Estates and toward the increasingly modest homes of Riverbrook. With each block, the contrast between John's world and Freddie's became more apparent. "So," John said, breaking the awkward silence, "you said you like fixing things. Is that what you want to do when you grow up? Be a mechanic?" Freddie nodded. "Yes, sir. Maybe own my own garage someday. Restore classic cars like yours." "That's a solid ambition," John replied, his tone suggesting he was actually impressed rather than patronizing. "Skilled trades are always in demand." As they drove, John found himself studying the boy from the corner of his eye. There was something familiar about Freddie's focused determination, something that reminded John of himself long before he'd amassed his fortune. Before the properties and portfolios, the boardrooms and business deals, John Donaldson had been just a hungry kid with calloused hands and big dreams. "What about you, Mr. Donaldson?" Freddie asked. "What do you do?" John's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "I build things. Started with houses, moved up to office buildings, now mostly commercial developments across the country." "So you're like a construction worker?" Freddie asked innocently. John chuckled, a genuine laugh that surprised even him. "Not exactly. I own the company. Several companies, actually." "Oh," Freddie said, processing this information. "So you're rich." The directness made John laugh again. "Some would say that, yes." "Is that why you have such a nice car?" "Partly," John admitted. "But this car is special. It was the first classic I ever restored. Back when I was not much older than you, working at a garage to put myself through night school." This revelation surprised Freddie. "You know how to fix cars too?" John nodded, his expression softening with nostalgia. "Used to be pretty good at it. Haven't had my hands dirty in a long time though." He glanced down at his now immaculate hands, the silver ring catching the light from passing street lamps. Freddie followed his gaze to the ring again. The design was mesmerizing, two hands clasped together in what looked like both greeting and promise. "My dad had a ring like that," Freddie said suddenly. "Not exactly the same but similar. With the hands." He paused, uncertain whether to continue, then added, "Grandma said it was from a brotherhood." John's hands tightened imperceptibly on the steering wheel. "A brotherhood?" "Yeah. Mechanics who helped each other out during hard times. Grandma called them the Silver Link." The Mustang swerved slightly as John's composure faltered. "The Silver Link," he repeated softly. "I haven't heard that name in years." "You know about them?" Freddie asked, excitement edging his voice. John nodded slowly. "My father was a member. That's how I got this ring." He held up his hand, the silver catching the light. "We weren't rich, far from it. But he taught me that a man's word and his willingness to help others were the true measure of his worth." The car slowed as they turned onto Freddie's street, a row of small, aging houses with chain-link fences and patched roofs. Freddie pointed to a modest white bungalow with peeling paint and a small, well-tended flower garden in front. "That's ours," he said. "The one with the blue mailbox." John pulled to the curb, studying the house. The contrast between this humble home and his own multiple residences, each worth millions, was stark. Yet something about the blue curtains in the windows and carefully maintained garden spoke of pride and care despite limited means. "Thank you for the ride, Mr. Donaldson," Freddie said, opening the door. "And good luck with your meeting." As Freddie moved to retrieve his bicycle from the trunk, John made a sudden decision. He pulled a business card from his wallet and scribbled on the back. "Here. If you ever need anything at all, call this number. It's my personal line." Freddie took the card hesitantly. "Thank you, but we're okay." "I know you are," John said, surprising himself with his sincerity. But the silver link was about helping when needed, no questions asked. Consider it honoring the brotherhood. Before Freddie could respond, the front door of the house opened, and an elderly woman appeared, concern evident in her posture. "That's my grandma," Freddie explained. "She worries." "Go on then," John said. "And Freddie, thank you. Not just for fixing the car but for the reminder." As Freddie wheeled his bicycle up the cracked concrete path, John watched, a strange feeling settling in his chest. It had been years, decades even, since he'd thought about his roots, about his father's beliefs and the values he'd once held dear. Somewhere along his climb to success, he'd forgotten the promise symbolized by the silver ring he still wore out of habit rather than conviction. The front door closed behind Freddie, and John drove away, his scheduled meeting suddenly seeming trivial compared to the unexpected connection he'd just experienced with a soaking wet boy who fixed classic cars and refused payment for his service. 3 days passed before their paths crossed again. For Freddie, they had been 3 days of mounting worry. His grandmother's cough had worsened, developing into a fever that persisted despite the over-the-counter medications they could afford. The electricity bill remained unpaid, and a final notice had arrived in their mailbox with threatening red letters. For John, they had been days of unexpected reflection. The encounter with Freddie had stirred memories long suppressed, of his own father's struggles, of the community that had supported them during lean times, of the promise he'd made when accepting the silver ring, to remember his roots and to help others as he had been helped. The meeting John had been rushing to that rainy afternoon had been about acquiring a struggling neighborhood in Riverbrook, Freddie's neighborhood, to demolish it for a high-end commercial development. Sitting in the boardroom, listening to his team discuss revitalization and urban renewal, John had found himself thinking of blue curtains and carefully tended flowers, of a boy who fixed engines with intuitive skill and refused payment for his work. For the first time in years, John had halted a project, instructing his team to explore alternative locations. His executives were baffled, but John offered no explanation for his sudden change of heart. On that third day, as evening approached, John found himself driving the Mustang through Riverbrook again, telling himself he was just passing through but knowing he was looking for a specific blue mailbox. When he spotted Freddie's house, he was surprised to see an ambulance parked outside, its lights flashing silently in the dusk. Without conscious decision, John pulled to the curb. He watched as paramedics emerged from the house with an elderly woman on a stretcher, Freddie's grandmother, he assumed. Freddie followed, clutching her hand, his young face etched with fear. John approached cautiously. "Freddie!" The boy looked up, startled. Recognition dawned through his worry. "Mr. Donaldson. What happened?" "It's Grandma," Freddie said, his voice cracking. "She can't breathe right. They think it might be pneumonia." One of the paramedics turned to Freddie. "We need to go, son. You can ride with us." "Wait," John interjected. "I know this boy. I can drive him to the hospital and stay with him." He offered his business card to the paramedic. "John Donaldson. I'm a family friend." The paramedic glanced at the card, clearly recognizing the name of one of the city's most prominent businessmen. He nodded and turned to Freddie. "Is that okay with you, kid?" Freddie looked between the ambulance and John, concern for his grandmother outweighing any hesitation. "Yes, that's fine." "Which hospital?" "Mercy General," the paramedic replied, already moving to close the ambulance doors. As the ambulance pulled away, Freddie stood frozen on the sidewalk, a boy suddenly facing adult fears alone. John placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Come on. We'll be right behind them." In the Mustang once more, Freddie sat silently, his hands worrying the pocket watch he always carried. John drove swiftly but carefully, occasionally glancing at the boy beside him. "She'll get the best care, Freddie," John assured him. "Mercy General is an excellent hospital." Freddie nodded numbly. "But we don't have insurance." "Not good insurance anyway. And we're already behind on bills." His voice was small, embarrassed to admit their financial struggles yet too worried to maintain pride. John's jaw tightened. How many times had he heard his own father voice similar concerns? How many nights had he lain awake as a child, overhearing hushed conversations about medical bills and impossible choices? "Don't worry about that right now," John said firmly. "Let's just focus on getting your grandmother the help she needs." At the hospital, they found Eloise Franklin already being examined in the emergency department. Freddie was allowed to see her briefly before she was taken for tests. John remained in the waiting room, making several phone calls in hushed tones. When Freddie returned, his face was pale but composed. "They're taking her for X-rays and stuff. They said it might be a while." "Then we'll wait," John said simply, putting away his phone. "Are you hungry? The cafeteria here actually has decent food." Freddie shook his head, then reconsidered as his stomach growled audibly. John smiled and stood. "Come on. You need to keep your strength up for your grandmother." Over sandwiches in the nearly empty cafeteria, John tried to distract Freddie with questions about school and his mechanical interests. Gradually, the boy began to open up, his passion for cars and engines temporarily overshadowing his worry. "So you taught yourself all this?" John asked, genuinely impressed by Freddie's knowledge. Freddie nodded. "Mostly from books and videos. And Mr. Torres at the junkyard lets me watch when he fixes things." "That's remarkable," John said. "Most people twice your age couldn't identify a carburetor problem in the rain, let alone fix it." A small, proud smile briefly lit Freddie's face before fading as worry returned. "Mr. Donaldson, what happens if Grandma has to stay in the hospital? Who's going to pay for it?" The directness of the question, so adult yet so childlike in its delivery, struck John deeply. Here was a 12-year-old boy worrying about hospital bills while his only family fought to breathe. "Freddie," John said carefully, "I'd like to help with the medical expenses." Immediately, Freddie's expression closed. "We don't take charity." "It's not charity," John replied. "Think of it as the silver link. One member helping another in need." Freddie studied John skeptically. "But I'm not a member. I don't have a ring." John considered this, then slowly removed his silver ring. In the harsh fluorescent light of the cafeteria, the clasped hands seemed to come alive, a symbol of connection and mutual support. "Your grandfather was a member, you said. That makes you legacy." He placed the ring on the table between them. "And honestly, Freddie, you embody the values of the link better than I have in a very long time." Freddie stared at the ring but didn't touch it. "I don't understand." John sighed, struggling to explain what he himself was only beginning to rediscover. "The silver link wasn't really about the rings, Freddie. It was about a promise, to remember where you came from and to help others along their journey, just as you were helped along yours." He rotated the ring so the clasped hands faced Freddie. "For years, I've worn this but forgotten its meaning. I built skyscrapers and made millions, but somewhere along the way I stopped seeing people, really seeing them the way my father taught me to." Freddie's gaze shifted from the ring to John's face, sensing the importance of what was being shared. "The day we met," John continued, "when you refused payment for helping me, it reminded me of something I'd lost. Something important." He pushed the ring closer to Freddie. "I'd be honored if you'd hold on to this for me. Consider it a loan, not a gift." Freddie hesitated, then carefully picked up the ring. It was too large for any of his fingers, but he closed his hand around it reverently. "I'll keep it safe," he promised. Before John could respond, a doctor appeared in the cafeteria doorway. "Freddie Franklin, your grandmother is asking for you." Freddie jumped up, the ring clutched tightly in his hand. John followed at a respectful distance as they were led to a hospital room where Eloise Franklin lay connected to oxygen, her face tired but her eyes alert. "Grandma!" Freddie rushed to her side, relief evident in every line of his body. "Are you okay?" "I'm better now, sweetie," she assured him, her voice weak but warm. She noticed John hanging back and raised a questioning eyebrow. "This is Mr. Donaldson, Grandma," Freddie explained. "He gave me a ride to the hospital." He glanced back at John, searching for the right description. "He's from the Silver Link. Like Grandpa was." Recognition flickered in Eloise's eyes as she took in John's expensive suit and confident bearing. "Frank's Brotherhood," she murmured. "I haven't heard that name in years." John stepped forward, extending his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Franklin. Your grandson is quite remarkable." "Yes, he is," she agreed, squeezing John's hand with surprising strength. "Though I'm afraid he's had to grow up too fast." The doctor returned then, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Franklin, we'd like to keep you overnight for observation and start you on 4 antibiotics. The X-rays confirm pneumonia, but we've caught it relatively early." "I don't know if our insurance will cover," Eloise began worriedly. "Everything has been arranged," John interrupted smoothly. "Please focus on getting better." Eloise's eyes narrowed with a grandmother's intuition for detecting charity, but before she could object, Freddie spoke. "It's the Silver Link, Grandma," he said earnestly, opening his palm to reveal John's ring. "Mr. Donaldson is helping because that's what members do. Like when Grandpa helped Mr. Rodriguez rebuild after the fire, remember?" Eloise's expression softened as she looked from the ring to John's face, seeing perhaps something of Frank's old brotherhood in this wealthy stranger. "The link always repays its debts," she said finally, a tacit acceptance of help offered with dignity rather than pity. As Freddie sat by his grandmother's bedside, John excused himself to make additional arrangements. In the hospital corridor, he found himself taking deeper breaths than he had in years, feeling as though a weight long carried was beginning to lift. 2 weeks later, the red Mustang once again pulled up to the blue mailbox on Cedar Lane. But this time, John wasn't alone. Beside him sat a distinguished-looking older man with wire-rimmed glasses and a leather case on his lap. Eloise, recovered from her pneumonia and now receiving proper medication for her chronic respiratory condition, welcomed them into the modest living room with the quiet grace that Freddie had inherited. "Mr. Donaldson," she greeted him. "And this is Eugene Jones." The older man introduced himself, shaking her hand. "I'm an administrator at Halston Academy." Freddie, who had been working on his bicycle in the driveway, entered wiping grease from his hands. His eyes lit up at the sight of John but turned questioning when he noticed Eugene. "Freddie," John said, "Mr. Jones here is from one of the best private schools in the state. They have an exceptional engineering program, including automotive design." Eugene smiled at Freddie. "Mr. Donaldson has told me about your remarkable mechanical aptitude. Our school has a new scholarship program for gifted students with practical skills, and we'd like to discuss the possibility of you joining us this fall." Freddie's jaw dropped. "Me? At Halston? But that's where rich kids go." "It's where students with potential go," Eugene corrected gently. "And we have specialists who can help with learning differences like dyslexia." Freddie's head snapped up. "How did you know about?" "I recognized the signs," John said quietly. "I struggled with it myself as a kid. Never was diagnosed properly until I was in college." The revelation created yet another unexpected connection between them. Freddie looked to his grandmother for guidance. Eloise studied John carefully. "This is very generous, Mr. Donaldson. But we value our independence." "This isn't charity," John assured her. "It's an investment in talent." Freddie fixed my Mustang in the pouring rain with nothing but a multi-tool and sandpaper. Imagine what he could do with proper training and resources. Eugene opened his leather case, revealing official-looking documents. The scholarship would cover tuition, books, and transportation. We also have a work-study program where Freddie could earn money in our maintenance department, putting his skills to good use. As the adults discussed details, Freddie slipped outside to clear his head. The possibility of attending Halston, with its state-of-the-art facilities and pathway to college, was overwhelming. Yet he worried about leaving his grandmother alone and about entering a world so different from everything he knew. John found him sitting on the front steps, turning the silver ring over and over in his fingers. "Lot to process, huh?" John said, sitting beside him. Freddie nodded. "Why are you doing all this for us? The hospital bills, now this school. You barely know us." John was quiet for a moment, gathering thoughts that had been crystallizing over the past weeks. "When I was about your age, my father got sick. Cancer. We had no money for treatment, no insurance. I was sure I'd lose him." He looked down at his hands, smooth now from years of boardrooms rather than engine work. A group of mechanics from the garage where he worked took up a collection. Not just money but time, covering his shifts, driving him to treatments, bringing us food. They called themselves the Silver Link, Freddie finished. John nodded. "My father survived. And when I was old enough, he gave me his ring and made me promise to remember the Link's code. What we do for ourselves alone dies with us. What we do for others remains." He sighed deeply. Somewhere along the way, making money became more important than making a difference. Until a soaking wet kid fixed my car and refused payment. Freddie looked down at the ring in his palm. "So this is you keeping your promise." "It's me remembering who I'm supposed to be," John corrected. "And recognizing in you the same spark my father saw in me. You deserve a chance, Freddie. Not because you're charity, but because you're capable." Freddie closed his fingers around the ring, feeling its weight, not just of silver, but of legacy and connection. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Those kids at Halston. They won't be like me." "No," John agreed. "But you won't be exactly like them either. And that's your strength, not your weakness. You see value where others see junk. You fix what others would discard." He gestured toward the house. "That scholarship. It's real. Eugene's an old friend who owes me a favor, but he wouldn't offer it if he didn't believe in your potential." Freddie nodded slowly, processing everything. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Donaldson?" "Anything. The day we met, your Mustang. Did it really break down, or were you just testing me somehow?" John laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "Pure coincidence, I promise. Though maybe not entirely coincidental." He glanced at the ring in Freddie's hand. "My father used to say that the link brings people together when they need each other most. Did I need you, or did you need me?" Freddie asked with unexpected insight. John's smile turned reflective. "Maybe both." As they returned inside to rejoin Eloise and Eugene, Freddie felt something solid forming in his chest. Not just hope for his future, but a sense of belonging to something larger than himself. A link in a chain that stretched backward through generations and forward into possibilities he was only beginning to imagine. 3 months later, John's private elevator climbed smoothly to the top floor of Donaldson Tower, the tallest building in the city's skyline. Beside him stood Freddie, dressed in the navy blazer and gray slacks of Halston Academy, looking both uncomfortable in the formal attire and quietly proud. "You sure your grandmother doesn't mind you spending Saturdays here?" John asked as the doors opened to his penthouse office with its panoramic views of the city. "She says it's good for me to have a mentor," Freddie replied, still awed by the luxury surrounding him despite his regular visits. "Besides, she has her book club now that she's feeling better." The improvement in Eloise's health had been remarkable since proper medical care had been arranged, not as charity, but through a newly established healthcare foundation that John had created to serve Riverbrook's residents. The foundation's logo featured 2 clasped hands, though few understood its significance. "Well, I brought something special today," John said, leading Freddie to a side room that had previously been locked. He opened the door with a flourish to reveal a state-of-the-art workshop, tools gleaming on pegboards, diagnostic equipment humming softly, and in the center, beneath a canvas cover, a distinctly car-shaped form. Freddie's eyes widened. "What is this?" "This," John said, pulling away the cover to reveal Freddie's father's pocket watch placed carefully on a watchmaker's stand, "is your next project." Freddie approached slowly, hardly daring to believe what he was seeing. The tarnish had been cleaned from the silver case, but the hands remained frozen at 3:47, waiting to be brought back to life. "I had it examined by the best horologist in the country," John explained. "The movement can be restored, but it needs special tools and expertise. I thought you might want to learn how to do it yourself." Freddie touched the watch reverently. "You think I can?" "I know you can," John assured him. "Just like I know you're going to ace your engineering classes despite what your previous teachers said about your learning challenges." In his first 2 months at Halston, Freddie had already proven John's faith justified. With proper support for his dyslexia and teachers who recognized his three-dimensional thinking skills, Freddie was thriving academically for the first time in his life. "I got an A on my physics test," Freddie shared, unable to hide his pride. "First A I've ever gotten." "That doesn't surprise me at all," John said, genuine pleasure warming his voice. "Now that's not all I wanted to show you." He moved to the larger shape at the workshop center and pulled away another cover, revealing a partially disassembled engine mounted on a stand. "Recognize this." Freddie circled the engine, studying it with expert eyes despite his youth. "It's from your Mustang." "It needs a complete rebuild," John confirmed. "I thought we could do it together. I haven't gotten my hands dirty with a proper restoration in years." Freddie's face lit with pure joy. "Really? You and me?" "Really," John affirmed. "You can teach me all the new techniques you're learning at school." For a moment, Freddie simply stared at the engine, overwhelmed by the trust being placed in him. Then he noticed something on the workbench beside the engine, a small silver object catching the light. "Is that?" He began moving closer. "I had it made," John said, picking up what was unmistakably a silver link ring sized for a boy's hand. "Not to replace your father's watch, but to stand alongside it. A symbol of our connection." Freddie hesitated. "But I'm not old enough to be in the Brotherhood." "The original link had no age requirements," John explained. "Only a willingness to help others and the courage to accept help when needed. You've demonstrated both." He held out the ring. "If you want it." With trembling fingers, Freddie accepted the ring. Unlike John's original, this one was sized perfectly for his young hand. As he slipped it onto his finger, he felt a weight, not of burden but of purpose. "There's one condition," John said, his tone serious despite the warmth in his eyes. "Someday when you meet someone who needs the kind of help you can give, someone who reminds you of yourself perhaps, you'll pass the tradition forward." "I promise," Freddie said solemnly. As they turned their attention to the engine, beginning the careful process of dismantling and cataloging each component, neither spoke of how their chance meeting had altered both their lives. They didn't need to. The evidence was all around them, in the workshop created for shared passion, in the school blazer Freddie wore with new confidence, in the revitalized community center in Riverbrook now serving dozens of families. And most visibly, in the matching silver rings they both wore, symbols of a connection that transcended wealth and circumstance, linking past to future through the simple power of kindness freely given. 6 months later, the gleaming red Mustang pulled into the driveway of what had once been Freddie and Eloise's small white house. The property was now barely recognizable, not because it had been torn down or drastically remodeled, but because it had been lovingly restored, its original character preserved while infrastructure was updated and space thoughtfully expanded. The front garden, once Eloise's small pride, now flourished across the entire yard, a riot of colors that drew admiration from throughout the neighborhood. A new ramp provided easier access for Eloise's occasional mobility issues, blending so seamlessly with the design that it appeared original to the house. Behind the wheel sat John, dressed casually in jeans and a work shirt, an outfit that would have been unimaginable to him a year earlier but now felt as comfortable as his boardroom suits once had. Beside him, Freddie was practically bouncing with excitement. "They're going to love it," Freddie assured him for the 10th time that morning. Mr. Torres hasn't had a day off in years. In the back seat, a large gift-wrapped box contained their surprise. Documentation for the junkyard that had been Freddie's informal classroom, now purchased by the Donaldson Foundation and converted into a community garage and training center. Mr. Torres, who had taught Freddie so much without asking for anything in return, would become its first director, with a salary that finally recognized his expertise and dedication. John smiled at Freddie's enthusiasm. "Remember, this was your idea. You're the one who saw the potential." "But you made it happen," Freddie countered. "I just had the thought." "Ideas plus action equals change," John replied, repeating what had become their shared mantra. "Neither works alone." As they exited the car, the front door opened to reveal Eloise and Mr. Torres, clearly confused by the gift box and the unusual Saturday morning visit. The junkyard owner's weathered face creased with suspicion, a lifelong habit of someone accustomed to life's disappointments. "What's all this about?" he asked gruffly, though his eyes softened at the sight of Freddie in his Holston uniform. The entire neighborhood had celebrated the boy's scholarship, seeing in his success a reflection of their collective potential. "Mr. Torres," Freddie began, suddenly nervous despite their careful planning, "remember how you always said the junkyard could be something more if you had the chance?" The older man nodded cautiously. "Well," Freddie continued, pushing the gift box forward, "now you have that chance." As Mr. Torres opened the box and began reading the documents inside, his expression transformed from confusion to disbelief to overwhelming emotion. His hands, strong and calloused from decades of mechanical work, trembled as he looked up at John. "This isn't charity," John said before the question could be asked. "It's an investment in the future of this community. In kids like Freddie who need mentors like you." Mr. Torres looked down at the papers again. "Community Automotive Training Center," he read aloud. "Director Manuel Torres." He shook his head in wonder. "All those years dreaming about having my own shop." "Dreams don't expire," John said quietly. "They just wait for the right conditions to grow." As the four of them moved inside to discuss details over Eloise's famous lemonade, John found himself observing the scene with a sense of contentment that had eluded him throughout his years of financial success. Here, in this modest living room with its handmade quilts and family photographs, he had found something his wealth had never provided: genuine connection. The silver ring on his finger caught the light as he accepted a glass of lemonade from Eloise. Across the room, Freddie's smaller ring glinted as he enthusiastically described the training center's plans to Mr. Torres. 2 links in a chain, connecting past to present to future. That evening, as John dropped Freddie off after their eventful day, the boy paused before exiting the Mustang. "Mr. Donaldson." "Yes. Remember when you asked if I needed you or you needed me?" John nodded, recalling their conversation months earlier. "I think," Freddie said thoughtfully, "the world needed both of us. Together." With that simple but profound observation, Freddie closed the car door and jogged up the path to his home, leaving John to reflect on how a broken-down car and a rainstorm had led to this moment, to restored lives, renewed purpose, and a silver link that would continue long after them both. The poor little boy who helped a billionaire fix his Mustang never could have imagined how a single act of kindness would transform not just 2 lives, but an entire community. One rainy afternoon, one generous choice, one moment of seeing beyond appearances. These seemingly small actions created ripples that continue to spread, touching life after life with a simple but powerful message that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in human connection. So the next time you see someone in need, someone different from you, someone from what seems like another world, remember Freddie and John. Remember that the greatest changes often begin with the smallest kindnesses, and that sometimes the real repair work isn't done on engines or watches, but on hearts and communities. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of kindness today. And don't forget to subscribe to Jenny Soul Stories for more tales that celebrate the human spirit. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever helped a stranger and discovered an unexpected connection? Or has someone's kindness changed the course of your life? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Until next time, remember that every act of kindness, no matter how small, creates a silver link in the chain of humanity, connecting us all in ways we might never expect but always deeply need.